Welcome to Close the Loop and Light It Up with Tableau Extensions. That's Ben. I'm Larry. Quick poll, who here is a professional developer? You get paid to write code and you're here to understand how to get started with extensions. Hands high, hands high. That's a large proportion. That's awesome, okay. Who here is not a pro developer? You don't get paid to write code. You're discouraged from writing code maybe, but given some sample code in the right language, you can put something together and it's valuable to you. That's actually me. All right, so that's okay. Who here is not a developer at all, doesn't know how to spell API, but you're here to understand what extensions are, how they work, and what you might be able to get out of them? Okay, so 45%, 40%, and 20%.
Ish, yeah. Your math is going to be off. But yeah.
Light is on. Is that working?
No, mine's on. I don't think yours is on. Oh, here. You know what? If you don't put it underneath there, if you actually expose it.
Is that working better now? No, still not. It was working and now not working, and we're trying to adjust levels and not. I think you might be adjusting here. Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Yes. Let's start over. Quick poll. I'm Larry Clark. I'm a strategic sales consultant here at Tableau. I've been here for a year and a month. This is my first TC. This is my second TC session. My first one was 2 hours ago. My voice is doing okay so far. I live and work in Austin, Texas. That's my wife, Laura, and my daughter, Sarah, my son, JT. I don't know if you've seen one of those. That is a parent selfie with teenagers where the teenagers are smiling. Very rare occurrence. I'm here because I wrote some articles on tablogs.com about how to write a write-back extension, so a step-by-step sequence of how to do that. We'll talk about that maybe a little bit later. I like getting my hands dirty, literally and figuratively, either with the old trucks that I seem to have a problem with, or technically. I have a YouTube video with about 80,000 views. It's about 10 years old, of how a mechanical fuel pump works. So I like understanding technical detail and then sharing that technical detail with other people. And I look forward to talking to you.
You didn't tell them about the truck.
Oh yeah, the truck. That's my current issue. That's a 1972 GMC pickup. It's taught me how to replace water pumps, head gaskets, how to replace and tune carburetors. I enjoy that kind of thing in my off time. So that's not me. Blue, that's not me. That's Josh Duhamel. But I'll tell you about that over a beer.
All right, thanks, Larry. So Larry's going to come back in a few minutes when we really go under the hood with the API. Is that right, Larry?
Yes.
Okay. Can we get my mic is working? You guys can hear me in the back? Sorry about the issues here, folks. So my name is Ben Lauer, and I've been at Tableau for about, people over here can't hear? I mean, I feel like I got it in the right spot. He just turned it up? Okay. So I've been at Tableau about 4.5 years. This is my 5th TC. So I got to go to TC back in 2015 when I joined. I lead Tableau's developer platform. So the extensions API that we're going to talk about today is a part of this developer platform that we provide. I'm based in Seattle, Washington. That's where I live. My wife and I throw an epic Halloween party every year. This is us. I was dressed up as Thor. This was like a couple weeks ago. I'm Thor. She's the Black Widow. We were Avengers. It was really fun. I can't compete and hang with Larry when it comes to the mechanical skills. But about 2 years ago, I did watch a YouTube video, and I learned how to service my pressure washer. Thank you, I appreciate that. I felt really good. I was able to clean up the moss and stuff that gathers in the Pacific Northwest. So again, I'm no Larry, but I did something there. I want to just point out too something that we're doing this week. If you collect 5 of these stickers, so we have 7 APIs that we're talking about this week. Collect 5 of them, take them to our booth down in the showcase, and you can have a black beanie that says Data Dev on it, here modeled by Pierce. So there were supposed to be some here in the session, didn't happen, but if you go down to the booth, tell them you came to the session, they'll give you a sticker, you can collect them. So, what are we going to learn today? Well, we're going to talk about the use cases. I was chatting with some of the folks over here, and they're just like, hey, I don't even know what extensions are. I keep hearing about them. People say they're really cool. What does it mean? So we're going to talk about the top use cases with extensions. We're also going to talk about what they are and what their components are. We'll then talk a bit about extensions security. Specifically, we'll talk about a brand new feature that just shipped in 2019.4 called Sandboxed Extensions. We'll talk a bit about what's new. So extensions have been around for a little bit, but we're constantly innovating and improving. So we'll talk about what's new and a bit of the future roadmap. And then finally, we'll make sure that everyone in here knows how to get started using them, but also building them. So I know I think Larry's estimate was 10% of the room or whatever said, hey, I don't really want to be a developer. I'm not a developer. I want to know how to use extensions. You'll have that information, but also if you want to take this back to people at your company or in your organization who might want to start building them, you'll have everything you need. So this is the Tableau developer platform. This is an overview. So we've got all kinds of use cases. If you look there in the bottom right corner, we've got APIs that help you connect Tableau to any data source that you want and bring that data into Tableau. We've got advanced analytics in the top right, embedded analytics. We've got sessions all week at TC that cover all of these topics. But what we're going to talk about today is in this box we're calling extensibility, specifically the extensions API. And extensions are all about bringing new capabilities into dashboards and enabling you, as we've titled the talk, close the loop and light it up. And those are going to, maybe those just, oi, I guess it spells oi, right? That'll make more sense in a minute. So let me just start off by doing a demo. So I know some folks in here are like, I've never even used extensions. I don't know what they are. Okay, so here's a dashboard in Tableau. Cannot see it. So what about if we do this? Now I can't see it, so I'll look over my shoulder. So if you notice down here in the bottom left, we have a dashboard object called extension. It's a puzzle piece. So we can bring this out onto our dashboard just like any other dashboard object, and it'll create the zone. And you notice we get this thing that pops up and it says, hey, do you want to go out to the extension gallery and get an extension? Or do you, how do I zoom on this? And then do I do a Windows key minus to get out of that? I'm going to have to restart the machine apparently to get out of this. All right, here we go. So you can see here we've got this. It's saying you can go out to the extension gallery to get extensions and download them, or you can use one that you've already downloaded and you have locally, My Extensions. So Windows key, how do I get out of this? 0? Minus? There we go, that worked. So let me just click Extension Gallery for a sec. And we'll bring this up just so you can see this. And you can see we've got extensions posted from our partners, some from us that we've created. We've got this new area up here in the top right corner. If you've downloaded 19.4 or higher, you can choose that. And it'll bring up another set of extensions that are compatible, have new capabilities. So let's jump back to Tableau. I'm going to actually choose My Extensions. And I've got an extension here called Show Me More, which I've already downloaded from the gallery. So it takes a second. Extension's going to load up, and it's going to tell me to get started. Most extensions will have a configuration phase So you'll go through some type of configuration to make it customized for the particular dashboard at hand. Here we've got Merlin and Chaling, the two developers of this extension. Merlin is actually here this week. He's very Dutch. He's very tall. He won the hackathon yesterday. So if anyone was there, you saw Merlin. He and his partner, Tristan, won the hackathon. So they're great. Merlin's a Zen master, as you can see. But what this is doing is I'm going to select the data sheet. And you can see here that this extension is allowing me to light up new capabilities. So new viz types that either are really, really hard to build in Tableau or are just not possible. So I'm going to choose a Sankey diagram. And then again, I have to configure this once. Once I configure it, this will just become part of my dashboard. So I'm going to say I want month, and I want my region, and we're going to look at sales. So now when I click OK, I want you to watch what happens. We now have a beautiful Sankey diagram. Now, we're going to talk about this a bit more, but this isn't just a static viz. I can come in and I could say select some marks on this viz over here. Oh, sorry, I gotta go to the sales sheet that I was looking at, and this is very awkward over my shoulder. Maybe if I click up here, we can see that the extension is notified of that selection and it's redrawn. So it's a two-way communication happening here, okay? So that's a quick demo of how to get an extension and how to add it to a dashboard. So we're going to switch back to the slides. Okay, so that was my demo. So what are extensions? Here we'll look at the usage scenarios and we'll do an overview of the components. So Larry and I were joking, close the loop and light it up. So these are the two broad cases. I appreciate the play along over there. So a couple of years ago, we had some of our partners, Narrative Science, they're here at the conference this week, Automated Insights, they're here as well. They had built an integration using our JavaScript API. And they have these platforms called natural language generation. They look at the data, and then they use machine learning and AI to generate full sentences that describe what's happening in your data and can surface insights. But what they were saying was this needs to be deeply integrated in the dashboard. It was kind of disjointed. So we were hearing that feedback. We were also hearing from you, our customers, that you would get an insight in Tableau, and you would leave Tableau to go take action. And so we were hearing literally from customers, help me close the loop in Tableau. So those two things were happening around the same time, and that led us down the path to create the extensions API that we have today. So we're going to talk today in these two broad buckets. But what do we mean by close the loop? Well, I just said a second ago, I get an insight, and then I want to take action. So maybe I'm a retailer, and I look at a dashboard, and it says, hammers are selling really, really well in Chicago, and they're not selling well in Seattle. And I look at the same dashboard and I see that all my hammers are supplied in my warehouse in Seattle. So what would I normally do? I'd leave Tableau, I'd go to my ERP system, I'd trigger some change. Well, with an extension, I can bring that ERP system or a portion of it right into the dashboard, and I can trigger that action from the dashboard itself. We also have a specific type of action, and Larry's going to demo this later, that we call write back. And write back just means I'm looking at my dashboard and I want to change the data. I want to write changes back to my underlying data source. On the light it up side, we've got custom UI. So the show me more example that we just looked at is an example of this. But you could also think of maybe I want to have a rich navigation experience, a table of contents, or something like that in my dashboard. Did anybody go to the session this morning that Tomasz Foldy and Christy Martini did? So a couple people did. They're going to rerun that on Friday. Mind-blowing. Like, go to the thing on Friday. It's do you remember the title of it? It was a Zen Master session around extensions. If you look it up, Tomasz Foldy and Christy Martini. Extreme APIs or something like that. But Chris showed this extension that he wrote where he makes an overlay on the entire dashboard so that you can point out like, oh, look at this insight here, or click here, this is how this dashboard works. So again, that's a good example of custom UI being brought in by extensions. And then finally, rich integration. So I mentioned those partners that were giving us that feedback. We can now bring third-party services, partner experiences, and richly integrate them into dashboards. Okay? So what are the components of an extension? Well, so this little diagram here represents our Tableau dashboard. The orange oval is the extension object that we saw we dragged out. And then the dotted line here represents the extension zone. So again, this is a screenshot of the dashboard we just looked at. This is what it looked like with Show Me More, right? We've got that extension zone in the dashboard. Now, an extension is a web application. It means it's created using standard web technologies. So an extension front end, that's the experience we see show up in the dashboard. Now, as a web application, to create an extension, you're going to use standard things. HTML, CSS, JavaScript, libraries like jQuery or other things out there on the internet. So that's my cloud that I put that in. It's out in the cloud. But the other, the thing here is our extensions API, as we saw in the demo, enables two-way communication. So that means that our extensions can interact with dashboards. They can respond to interaction. So again, I selected some marks, and the extension could respond to that. Oh, you selected those marks? Let me redraw with just those data points. And then, of course, it can get the data, which is what it does. It grabs the data points, and then it drew that custom Sankey diagram. Now, the other side of a web application is that they're hosted. They live on a web server. That could be, maybe I'm running it locally on my desktop machine. Maybe I've got a server at my company, and we're running them there internally. Or maybe they're running out, being hosted by a partner on AWS or Azure or some cloud service like Heroku. And then finally, and Larry's going to talk about this a little bit more here in a sec, we have this thing called a T-Rex. And I purposefully chose the glue icon here because the T-Rex is really the glue. The T-Rex, the T is for Tableau, the EX is for extension, and the R is so we can call it a T-Rex. That's the truth, actually. So you might have noticed past TCs, we have the T-Rex T-shirts around. Yeah, that's this. So, but the T-Rex is essentially a manifest that describes the extension. So Larry's going to get into that a bit more. So with that, Larry's going to come back up and take us through another demo. As he's coming up, I just want to say this: we demoed this extension Jungle Book 2 years ago at TC when we had our first preview of this API. And we've just shipped this as an official extension to the gallery, although it's now called Image Map Filter. So I guess when we make it real, we have to make the name more boring. I don't know what that's about, but it's actually a really cool extension Larry's going to show us.
Thanks, Ben. What we have here is a map in Tableau Desktop. It is a map, it appears to be a map of wildlife sightings. And if I click on one of the icons, I'll get a line chart showing the frequency of wildlife sightings. And it looks like what's happened here is someone has come back from a TC 35 years in the future and brought us a data set. And I don't know what's happened 30 years in the future, but I'm not sure I want to visit the the Pacific Northwest after that. So this image map filter application, or it was called Jungle Book a couple of years ago, was built as a fun way to illustrate that Tableau extensions can be used to do normal Tableau things like filtering, but in a new, fun, and imaginative way. This is now, this is going to be published, or this is actually out on the marketplace. And is it going to be on GitHub? So this source code is on GitHub. I would like to filter this map to plan a vacation 30 years from now and see where I want to go or where I don't want to go. So you saw Ben earlier bring this out. I dragged and dropped that extension object, placed it where I'd like to. I can place it in a static location on the dashboard. I can also place it as a floating, in a floating location on the dashboard, as a floating object on the dashboard. I'm going to choose my extensions. And then I'm going to choose the T-Rex file. I'll always get this dialog when in the T-Rex file the developer has specified that they're going to take data out of the Tableau dashboard. So this is a warning, and this is my only opportunity to say, yes, you're allowed to do that, or to reconsider and say, you know what, I don't want a third-party developer that I don't know accessing the data in this dashboard. Okay? But notice here I've got the extension name, created by, whether or not it has full data access. In this case, it doesn't. And the extension URL, actually where that extension is hosted. I'll click OK. And like Ben said, most extensions have an initial configuration step, and this is no different. I'm going to choose the image that I'd like to work with. In this case, I'll choose an appropriate image. I'm going to choose which dimension and which worksheet I would like to work with from a filtering perspective, and OK. Obviously, image of animals for an animal sighting database. This could be a hospital floor. This could be a diagram of a torso. This could be a machine diagram, a topo map, any sort of image. I'm going to specify that I'd like to create some polygons. Create a polygon over the monkey, and this is going to take a second. So I'll configure this. This is a one-time step. One aspect of extensions is that once you load an extension into Tableau Workbook, the information about that extension is saved into the XML of that workbook file. And so when you bring that workbook up again, the extension is reloaded. And the extension developer can also specify what kind of state they would like to save in that workbook as well. And so extension developers will often save things like security information. So I've specified my polygons, and now I will go full screen for the grand presentation. Now if I click on the monkey, I've filtered my map to just monkey sightings. I click on the ostrich, I filter my map, and now 30 years from now, if I want to visit the Pacific Northwest and I want to see cheetahs and lions, I can control, double-click, select the two of those, and I've got a map of my cheetah and lion sightings. So that's image map filter, aka Jungle Book, and the source code and the extension are accessible to you today. And I'm going to stick on this machine, Ben, and go back to the presentation at this point. And I didn't hear you scream, no, don't do that, so I'm going to stick with it. We did a poll at the beginning, and we had developers, we had non-developers, non-professional developers who are developers, and then we had people who aren't developers at all. That third group of folks, stick with us. We're going to show a little bit of XML. We're going to show a little bit of code. There's not going to be a quiz at the end, as far as you know, but we won't get into too much technical detail. The first two groups, we will point you to where you can get more technical detail at sessions later on in TC, but we're just going to show a little bit of XML, a little bit of code now. This is where you can start learning how to work with extensions. This is a tutorial that's published to GitHub, so GitHub's Tableau repository, and then within there, there are a number of separate sections, separate repositories. Search for the Extensions API, and this is all there. You can download the whole thing. You've got samples and tutorials. This particular tutorial goes step 0 through 6, adding on a little bit of incremental functionality every time. Keisha did a terrific job in building this, 18 months ago or something? So the extension components that Ben talked about earlier, the first one is the actual user interface that you're going to see in that browser window, and it is literally a browser window that's in Tableau Desktop. This one is called markselection.html, and it's from that tutorial that I just pointed out. A couple of interesting lines of code in here. The first one is a script tag. And that's actually going to call the JavaScript file that contains Tableau's extension API, the extension code itself. So that's where it gets it, right? The second one is this. In this case, it's called markselection.js. That's the file that's actually going to call that extension code and interact with it, okay? So this is the minimum viable product for an extension. You need a web UI, and then you need a JavaScript file to actually call the extension code. What does the JavaScript file look like? Well, this is the minimum viable JavaScript file for working with extensions. It makes this single function call that calls out to the extension API, starts it up, and then everything else that you do in the extension is going to be done in this JavaScript function in between the two squiggly brackets inside there. Make sense? Okay. So that's the minimum amount of work that a developer needs to do to write an extension. This stuff talks to the extension API in Tableau Desktop, or on a workbook that's published in Tableau Server, talks to the extension API in Tableau Server. But how does Tableau Desktop know how to get to the extension in the first place? How does it know where to go to get that extension, to get those files? Let me glue you in. Nobody groaned. They groaned internally, I think. This is a T-Rex file. Ben told you what T-Rex means. And you saw on that dialog box when I brought up the extension before that showed me the name, it showed me the developer and all that stuff. This is where that's stored. So there's a name tag, there's a description tag, there's an author tag that shows the author name, the website, and email address that you can reach out to, which API version of the extension this was written to in the first place, and then perhaps most importantly, the URL where this extension is hosted. And again, that can be internal, that can be on an AWS or an Azure web server. These can be hosted literally anywhere. And one thing we want to emphasize is that extensions are just code. They can do anything that you can do with code. It's just you have to have a user interface in Tableau, and you have to have some JavaScript code that interacts with Tableau itself. So the components in this particular case are markselection.html and markselection.js, and then that T-Rex file. So this is probably the simplest extension you'll ever see, and again, you can get to this from that tutorial. Drilling down to an additional level of detail, and the reason I'm here is because I wrote a SQL Server write-back extension as part of my interview process a little over a year ago, and then presented it to my team. The first time I presented it, they said, that's not good enough, do a little bit more work to write it back to a database. So I wrote more work I did more work writing back to a database, and I eventually got the job, and here I am. I then documented how to do this at my website, which is tablogs.com. You'll see when I show you what this is that my level of technical ability as far as JavaScript development is more along the pressure washer side than the rebuilding an engine side, okay? So this is writing back to SQL Server. The situation here is like every good sales organization, we're using salesforce.com to manage our sales pipeline. We're pulling that information into a dashboard so frontline sales managers can work with the sales reporting. In this particular case, we're looking at sales commission models. I, as a sales manager, don't necessarily want to share every piece of news about my sales pipeline with upper management because that's going to set expectations. So every sales manager in the world has their own scratch pad, whether it's in Excel or Google Sheets or a piece of paper on their desktop. What I've done is I've created a scratch pad in Tableau. So I've got Richard Martinez and Patricia Johnson. I've selected the two of them. Maybe I want to select Sharon King, and if you'll notice down here, I have Richard Martinez. This is my extension. This sales adjustments rectangle is my extension user interface. I have Richard and Patricia selected. Maybe I want to select Sharon as well, and so now I have the three of them selected in my user interface, in my extension UI. So I'll make an adjustment. It looks like Richard's going to miss out on a $50,000 deal. Patricia, one of her clients, is able to move up $250,000 into this year's budget, and Sharon has found an absolute whopper. She's got a $1.2 million deal that she's working on and she thinks might close. So I'm going to hit Submit Sales Adjustment down here, and what I'd like you to do is watch the viz up here as I do so. I click Submit Sales Adjustment, and it dynamically changed because I just wrote to SQL Server, and then my extension code asked Tableau Desktop to refresh every one of those vizzes. So I've just closed the loop. Within Tableau Desktop, I didn't have to go to some other app to make my sales adjustments. I didn't have to download all this stuff to Excel and create my own little spreadsheet. I've got a scratch pad here, entirely self-contained within Tableau. So the components of this extension are a little bit more complex than the components of the tutorial extension that you saw earlier. I've got an index.html. I've got a extremely basic JavaScript user interface. And then I've got a couple of JavaScript files, an app file, that's the one that's actually interacting with the extensions API. And then I've got this one that I called app.db, and it's marshaling the information that I actually want to send to the database file. And then up here on the web server, completely unknown to Tableau Desktop, I've got this db.js file. That's the file that's actually, it knows how to talk to SQL Server, and it's making a SQL Server call. If I wanted to change this extension to work with Oracle or to work with Google Sheets, I would change db.js and leave the client side of the extension completely alone. Make sense? Okay, now Ben's going to come back up and talk to us about what's new and what's next.
Okay, and do we have is the remote plugged in? Can I plug it in, or is it going to? All right, thanks, Larry. Okay, so what's new? We've got some new extensions. So we took a quick preview of the gallery earlier. I didn't even show you all the new extensions for 2019.4. These are new extensions as of about, I think, a week ago. And again, the URL down there at the bottom right, extensiongallery.tableau.com, is where you can go and find these. But a few extensions I just want to highlight because they're very cool. First off is this one called Kepler GL. And this was actually demoed much more thoroughly in the session I mentioned earlier by Chris and Tomasz. But this is an extension that brings WebGL-based maps and ability to work with geospatial data and create these beautiful, interactive, animated experiences that you see here. So you can go get that one. It's free. You can start using it. Go nuts. The next one, Narrative Science. Again, it's one of the partners we've been working with for many years. They're here at the Tableau conference. If you want to go and check them out, you can get a live demo of this. But it's actually really cool. Now, this is one extension that does require access to your data, right? So Narrative Science has an on-prem server version, and they have a cloud version. But you do have to be comfortable with the fact that your data is being sent to their service, and then they apply their machine learning algorithms to then generate full sentences that describe. And our customers are using these types of extensions to standardize on interpretations, People are stopping to have to do the mind-numbing work of, oh, I'm going to go look at this viz every week and type up a summary and send it to the team. The summary is just built in dynamically. So this one's super cool, so you can check this one out. And then finally, Scrollytelling. Again, another partner called Apps for Tableau. They're here. They've got a booth down in the showcase. You can go check out their stuff. But Scrollytelling is an extension that brings this very natural, interactive way to experience your data and tell a story. You just kind of scroll, and the viz changes, the dashboard changes, and we have all this content there. It's really, really cool. So those are some of the extensions that are new, and new extensions are coming in all of the time. Here's a screenshot of the 2019.4. So I mentioned the Sandboxed extension feature. I'm going to talk more about that in a moment. But you can see, I gotta do the zoom again here. Control 1. Oh, yes, I am on the wrong laptop. Thank you. Perfect. Thank you. So if you notice, on the top right corner of the card, we've got this little icon. So it's a cloud with the padlock on it. So this is the way of us showing that this is a sandboxed extension and that your data is completely secured. And this is, of course, the image map filter, aka Jungle Book, that Larry demonstrated. So if you're on 2019.4 and later, you can see a whole bunch of other extensions being exposed. Oh, I should also point out, a lot of the extensions have been updated to be sandboxed. So you might see two versions in the gallery, but something like image map filter is only available as a sandboxed extension. So also what's new with extensions is a lot of new capabilities that we've added to the API and to the platform this year. So sandboxed, this is the wrong text. I think our slide got messed up here, Larry. No worries. Hopefully it's just a quick plug and we will be back and on our way. Yeah. So let's go down. Now this one's messed up too. Somehow our text got screwed up. So what this text was supposed to say is we have now added support for a modern version of Chromium. So we had an older Chromium browser version for a while, and now we're on a modern version. So as a web developer, it means you have access to the latest web standards and technology. But what the text currently says, which is also true, is that sandboxed extensions are now whitelisted by default. So that is something that we've added. This is all the animation script. So disable only network-enabled extensions on desktop now. This is, I don't know where this text came from. Let's just ignore this for a second. Let me just talk to what's new. So sandbox extensions are new. I honestly do not know where this came from. You don't know either, right? Yeah. Thank you, Microsoft. I always blame Bill Gates when I have a problem with Office. We've added, so this one's true. We added extension gallery to the extension gallery, the sandbox extensions. We added support for show and hide. If anyone was at TC last year, we did a demo in Devs on Stage where extensions can now show and hide themselves or other zones. So it can make for a much more interactive, seamless experience for an extension. We added TypeScript bindings for extensions. So if you're a TypeScript developer, that's good news. That gives you full IntelliSense and autocompletion support in your text editor. We now have an NPM package for the TypeScript bindings. We also added support for download in desktop. So that's relatively new. We had that means an extension can now say, download this thing, and that works in desktop now. So if you're new to extensions, you're like, I don't know what that means. But if you've used them for a while, those are some nice improvements. So I've mentioned Sandboxed Extensions a couple times, so I want to talk a little bit more about this. So we showed earlier that on the right side of the line was the extensions host, right? And things were just sort of hosted, again, locally by the developer in my company, wherever. But with a sandbox extension, it's a new model. The developer of a sandbox extension must take the package of all the code. They can't call out to any external library, so everything has to be packaged up, and they give it to us, and then we load it up. I shortened the URL to abcd.tableau.com. We're hosting these packages in our cloud. Okay, so the developer writes it, and they give it to us, and we host it. And then what we do is we use a technology called Content Security Policy, or CSP. And this is a modern browser standard. And what it allows us to do is say that when this extension is loaded by any one of our customers, be it in Tableau Desktop or in Tableau Online or Tableau Server, that extension is technically not able to make any network requests at all. That means all of your data stays with you and it cannot go out to a third party. Now that also means an extension like Narrative Sciences extension that does that natural language generation, that could not be sandboxed because again, they require the data to go to their server. So what happens is in this Tableau hosted sandbox environment is again, the developer can't call out to jQuery and use the jQuery library. They can use the jQuery library, but they have to bundle that into that static package. I can no longer call out to coolml machineLearningEngine.com, and most importantly, Dr. Evil can't trick us with an extension and send that data out to Evil Corp. So those are just disabled with Sandboxed Extensions. So I was talking to some folks over here before the session started, and we were talking about how a lot of our admins are they're not approving extensions. They're not safe listing them because they can't trust the third parties. Well, we believe that sandbox extensions can be trusted by default. They're on by default. The sandbox extensions was validated and security pen tested by a third party. It passed with flying colors. So it is a great new technology that we're making available as part of our extensions offering. So, Larry mentioned earlier that we were going to talk about some other sessions. So we've got some hands-on trainings this week about building extensions. So if you want to get more hands-on and go through some experiences, we've got the developer deep dive, which is going to go much, much deeper than what we did today. We've also got a session dedicated totally to security and administration. So if you're a Tableau server admin or you want that information, you might check that session out. There's also You Did What? With the Extensions API. That session's happening on Thursday. That one's going to be amazing. It's going to be really, really great. So if you want to just go and see like what the community is doing to really push the envelope with extensions, go to that. And then I mentioned the Zen Master talk, and then there's another one by Merlin as well. So how can you get started? What are the resources that you or your team might want to have access to? Well, I would encourage you all to check out the Tableau Developer Program. We launched this a year ago, and the Developer Program is totally free. You can get there at developer.tableau.com at the bottom. Well, you get a lot of benefits in the Developer Program. First of all, you get a free personal developer site in Tableau Online. We have a special Tableau Online environment where we're provisioning APIs earlier, and we're working on making them available even earlier going forward. But what this means is you don't have to install a new version of Tableau Server or Tableau Desktop to start working with our latest APIs or use any of our APIs. You can use this personal developer site to build. And we put webhooks on there. Webhooks is a brand new capability in 19.4. Sandboxed extensions, right? So if you want to start building things for the Tableau platform, you can use this site to do that. You also get access to early APIs, as I mentioned, not only in this online environment, but when we had an alpha version of the Hyper API that we just shipped recently, that was made exclusively available to our developer program members as well. We provide a connection with Tableau engineering teams by having a monthly webinar. We call them our sprint demos, where we show you what we've built and completed. We might talk about, hey, this thing's coming, we want feedback, what direction should we go? So we're really getting people involved there, and so it's just really great. And then I'll leave this slide up, because if you want to take one photo of all the kind of places to jump off, this would be it. Also, the slides will be made available later as well if you want all of them. But Larry talked about GitHub. We've got overview information about all of our developer tools at the second link. And then we've also got some videos and training content on YouTube. So I'll come back to that in a second. Just a reminder, we'd love to get your feedback in the app. Give us a thumbs up, give us a thumbs down, or 5-star. I don't know what the rating system is this year, but we'd love to hear your input about how we can make this session even better going forward, or also what you liked, what you might have seen today. So with that, thanks for coming. We're going to hang out here for a few minutes, so if we've got any questions, looks like some of you want to get off and go to the next thing, which is totally cool, but we're happy to hang out and take some questions. Thank you.